Well, we're going to keep with the conversation of the Bekkersdal Tavern, that massacre that took place, as they, of course, were appearing in court. We're now joined by Jongikhaya Kraai from the Gauteng Liquor Forum, the spokesperson there. Thank you so much for your time, Jongikhaya. We heard, of course, some of the accused appearing in court today. What stood out particularly, as our reporter was indicating, is that most of these suspects were indeed Lesotho nationals. Does this, of course, speak to the issues that were raised in regards to the fact that this was an issue linked to illegal mining, but also why have taverns themselves become increasingly targets of mass shootings across the country?
Good afternoon, Veronica. We are very happy and glad to hear that these suspects were apprehended. And it is also a huge problem for us because, as you would know, taverns offer relaxation, and it's a time for them or for our patrons to relax and to have that camaraderie amongst themselves. Now, if there's a turf war that is happening very close by, and whoever that is a patron of ours is targeted, and whoever that comes and gets them usually finds them at our places, then it becomes very concerning for us. The only thing that we can urge with our members is that they must have their cameras, and the security must be tight, and also they must work very closely with their SAPS and their CPFs, because we don't know when this will happen again. These are turf wars, and it's something that we ourselves as tavern owners cannot, in lack of a better word, shy away from or run away from.
And how big of a role do illegal firearms play in tavern shootings? And I think the next question would also be, why are they still so easily accessible?
Well, that is, I think, a question of the SAPS. But as you would know, in our working environment, we've got signs that no firearms are allowed, no knives are allowed. So anything that is a weapon is not allowed in our taverns. So whoever, or these groups that are fighting amongst each other, they know exactly that the people and the patrons that they would find in there are unarmed. And these savage killings are just, I'm trying to find the right term, but there's no right term to say it's barbaric, and it's very inhumane.
Absolutely. And I think, the issue as well, when it comes to these stories, if you look at the Salisbury mass shooting, Bekkersdal as well, has been the continuous trend of illegal taverns. Are illegal or non-compliant taverns making communities more vulnerable to such violent crimes?
That is absolutely true. There's a proliferation of these unlicensed taverns, and these can only be curbed through working together with the SAPS, the CPFs, and the communities. If all these three people, or these three associations, or these three groupings work together, they can be able to identify illegal taverns and also report them and ask the SAPS to close them down. Other than that, it's just a proliferation of unlicensed taverns, and this has got to be dealt with by the SAPS and the Gauteng Liquor Board as well.
Yeah. And we've spoken, of course, about the fact that taverns have somewhat become, these hotspots for these killings, while patrons at the same time are just, sitting ducks. At the same time, I would like to say, is it clear that taverns are also somewhat becoming places that are shrouding, or perhaps maybe even safe havens for some of these organized crime, illegal miners, or turf wars, as you've mentioned?
No, I don't think they are safe havens. I think it's a place for them to relax. However, they are relaxing, and they know that they are in a turf war, and they are relaxing in the midst of everybody seeing them. So it makes everybody become a target. Instead of them going to buy and live and enjoy themselves at places that they know they'd be hidden, once they are enjoying themselves right in the open, in the middle of innocent people, then it makes everybody a target. So it's just an issue of those taverners that are operating within close to mines or within those areas. They must be very vigilant of of their customers, new customers. They must just serve customers that they know. Customers that they don't know, they must just ask them to either leave or just have a takeaway, because it makes everybody a target, including the owner themselves.
And as the Gauteng Liquor Forum, what responsibilities do tavern owners as well as liquor authorities such as yourself bear when patrons are killed at licensed premises?
When they are killed at license, I don't think there's any taverner in this world or in Gauteng or in South Africa that wants any death to happen at their outlet. So as soon as a death happens in your outlet, then it becomes a huge problem, because it becomes an issue of, are you licensed? One, is your place safe? Is your place clean? Do you have your code of conduct? How close do you work there with your SAPS? What is the response time of the SAPS? How close are you with your CPFs? So all these questions come into play. But more than anything, it disturbs, obviously, the life of the business and also the life of the neighborhood, because the majority of our taverners, we operate in residential areas. So obviously, when there's a shooting, the neighbors become concerned. They also feel like the tavern is unsafe. So it becomes a huge problem. I'm sure that whoever that is gotten in such trouble, the next day you wonder whether you should continue with business or close your outlet. So we don't want to find our outlets or licensed outlets in that position, but it becomes a very, very big problem for a taverner and his neighborhood.
Absolutely. And I think, speaking to that question of the problems for the establishment and the community itself, what immediate action will prevent another tavern massacre? Perhaps maybe even suggestions from the forum itself. And this is, of course, not about investigations happening after, but what proactive measures need to be taken to keep the establishment safe, but also the communities that these establishments, of course, are a livelihood in.
I think the first thing would be to make sure that each outlet has got a camera, that we have to identify who's walking out, who's walking in. Two, a close relationship with your neighbors or your neighborhood, a close relationship with your SAPS, your CPF, so that if your neighborhood knows that your place is safe and they hear gunshots, they must be the ones not to come to your aid, but at least call the CPFs, call the SAPS on your behalf. And also, if they can, try and identify any car that will pass by or anything of the sort. Because if we don't work together with our communities, our SAPS and our CPFs, then it leaves us vulnerable, because if something is happening, if a neighbor can help out, then they don't. So stronger relations with our communities and our policing forums will be a way that will curb any further violence, but also making sure that our places are armed with cameras in order to identify any car or any suspicious movements.